On this week's episode of the EchoCast, we will talk about Splinter Cell getting the green light, new Starfield information, Mass Effect 3 dev ending thoughts from a new video, BF 2042's beta post-mortem blog, and much, much more. Let's get into it. Welcome to the EchoCast. I am Morgan, aka Bon Diesel, and this is a podcast about gaming, tech, and whatever else I feel like ranting about. Please take a moment to subscribe to and rate the podcast on whatever platform you listen to it on. Comments, likes, and subs on YouTube, retweets on Twitter, and iTunes reviews are the most helpful. So go do it. Do it right now. Do it. Okay. Now we're good. Also, be sure to let me know if you have any questions or topics for the next show by tagging me on Twitter or responding to my tweets, submitting them in the YouTube comments, or by becoming a patron. Thank you to our Patreon supporters for this month: PK, Uber Timmy, Hassan, Darren, Christian, Man-Made Golf, and Grano. If you would like to support this podcast and my other content, please check out patreon.com/bondiesel. Your main perk to that is that if you don't catch the live recording, you do get the podcast a couple days early. And I am more than welcome to hear out any new or cool or whatever ideas for patron supporters. I am happy to oblige. Moving on to the gaming news from this week, our first story is talking about Splinter Cell supposedly being greenlit for a new game. So a big story popped up. It has not been confirmed by, or I believe even commented on by Ubisoft, but there are some pretty believable confirmations that a new Splinter Cell game has been greenlit. If you don't already know, Splinter Cell hasn't had a new game since Blacklist, I believe, which is, I believe, from the 360 days. Because I remember playing it on the Xbox One and it even felt old then. So if people don't remember that, those last couple games for Splinter Cell did not sell very well, and that led to the series being canned or at least put into retirement for quite a while. But don't worry, Ubisoft has been happy to use that license as much as possible and throw it into every game that desperately needs some type of nostalgia and attention. The main one being the last two Ghost Recon games made by Ubi Paris. I do not like those games. I think they are not very good Ghost Recon games. And it seems like, for whatever reason, Ghost Recon became the main place for Ubisoft to shove every single outside IP into it they could, including Splinter Cell with Sam Fisher, The Predator, apparently, as well as some other crossovers, including The Terminator and Breakpoint. But that is a rant for a different day. We don't know much about what the Splinter Cell game is, who it's being made by, when it's going to come out, all of that. I do personally have some speculation. There is a studio called Ubisoft Stockholm. I believe this studio started off as Ubisoft as a massive studio, who's the developer of The Division and Division 2, as well as the upcoming Avatar and Star Wars games. And I remember a couple years ago, it had to have been seeing job openings, because I was always looking for Division job openings just to have something to make a video about or talk about on the podcast. And I remember seeing Massive Stockholm pop up a few times, but never hearing about what they were doing. I don't know this for a fact, but I'm willing to bet that this Stockholm studio is what became of that little offshoot studio. The only people we know who are there, and of course I suck, so I didn't get the name, but the lead of the studio and whatever project they're on is a former Dice developer who I believe who worked on and maybe led Battlefield 3 and 4. Um, we also know, if you're a Division fan and you're listening to this podcast, we have our amazing, wonderful, and very handsome Hamish Bode, who is over there after he has left the Division team, since that game doesn't really need as many community managers anymore, it seems. And so Hamish is over there at Ubisoft Stockholm now, but we don't actually know what they're working on. If you have a lead of a studio who's that notable, and then Ubisoft throws one of their best, in my opinion, very biased, of course, but also most experienced com devs or com managers. I don't know. I don't understand Ubisoft's system with, is a developer the one who's in charge, the community developers and community managers, and I don't know. I don't understand it. So I'm just going to call him a community developer because I'm pretty sure that's what he is. He's, probably one of their most experienced ones. And the fact that he was involved in the Division 1 and 2, which were two huge games for Ubisoft. It seems like whatever Stockholm is working on, it seems very possible, in my opinion, that they have all of that horsepower from a development and community standpoint there. But we don't know that. I'm merely speculating. As for when this game might come out, if it's being greenlit, then they're in pre-production. In pre-production on a game, especially a game that hopefully is going to be a big giant AAA title and a very big deal for Ubisoft, and a Splinter Cell game, I would imagine it's going to take at least 2 or 3 years. So even if they've been in it, we're looking at least 2 or 3 years from now before they start full production. And then you're looking at 2 or 3 years of full production, probably 2. Hopefully it's maybe a slightly open world, but fairly linear, mission-based stealth game that maybe has some of the co-op multiplayer components of like the PvP, the Mercs versus Echelon or whatever it used to be called, or Spies versus Mercs or whatever. So I mean, I think we're probably looking at 4 or 5 years at least, unless this has been going on longer than we think. It wouldn't surprise me if maybe it has been in pre-production for a bit. This Stockholm studio has been around for a while, at least a couple years, in whatever name it was being called. So maybe they've been doing pre-production for a while. I'm not sure. But I guess we'll have to wait and find out about that. A big prediction I have, which is probably not all that surprising, especially if it's a few years out, is that I am very willing to bet that this is going to be a next-gen only game. I think Ubisoft is going to be one of the last of the big publishers to move completely next-gen. Due to the shortages of the consoles, and so that their install bases aren't as big as they would be if we had more free flowing supply and stock. I think I don't see Ubisoft going full next gen until they have a much larger install base for the new consoles. I think that they want to make sure they get them sales numbers, and none of the games that they're putting out right now appear to be anywhere near next gen only. Playing demos or trials of games like Riders Republic and things like that. It seems like they're very much happy to do the cross gen thing for now. But I think by the time that this Splinter Cell game comes out, we'll be going full next gen, and hopefully they take full advantage of that and make a game for the first time, and as long as I can remember, where player models don't look atrocious. I legitimately think the last Ubisoft game I can think of that had like nice looking player models was probably Division 1. I feel like all of the Assassin's Creed games, the Far Cry games, even Division 2, their games just, and Riders Republic, which I just tried out last night, like their faces, man. That faces and hair and facial hair is just a problem. And those games are all on different engines. I don't understand. Obviously, faces and hair are hard, but I suspect and I hope that they go full next gen with this next Splinter Cell game, and hopefully they that helps out with a whole bunch of stuff. Um, there's been lots of reactions from the gaming community about this kind of confirmation of this finally happening. There's been lots and lots of people kind of moaning and groaning about how Sam Fisher has been shoved into every different game that you can think of in the Ubisoft umbrella. Even to the point where they did little those little pop figures. And they had one for like Assassin's Creed, and they had one for maybe even Far Cry, I think. And they were the actual characters. I think the Far Cry one was Voss. I think the Assassin's Creed one was Ezio. And then the one that they had for Splinter Cell was a rabbit. Like, it was like the most disrespectful thing I've ever seen. They had the actual Ezio and like pop, like the pop figure. They had the actual Voss. And then they had a stupid rabbit with the Sam Fisher outfit on. Like, it was just so brutal, man. I'm like, good lord, like they're just really good. They're just really stoking people up, it seems like. But not to mention like the Ghost Recon things I talked about. There was even I believe Sam Fisher apparel that showed up in Division 1. I don't know if it was apparel, but I know that you could see his goggles in the base of operation in that game. So it seems like some of those people are calmed down now, but a thing that I've talked about before is whether or not we really want the modern Ubisoft to even make a Splinter Cell game. I think it's arguable that you don't, because they've really gone down this very formulaic way of making games that, Assassin's Creed, The Division, Far Cry, Ghost Recon, all of these games are open world, control point, loosely, not, loose missions when you actually get into a real mission. Like, they all kind of look the same. They when if you could show a random person an Ubisoft game from the last 5 years, with some exceptions, well, I was about to say Phoenix Immortals, but that was the same idea, even though I thought that game was great. Rabbids, like the Rabbids Mario game is like one of the few games you could show someone and they wouldn't know who made it. But most of their games, you could show someone who's a gamer an unlabeled game footage and be like, oh, that's an Ubisoft game because it has this, that, and the other. There's a lot of people that are concerned that this Splinter Cell game is just going to be like a mod of Breakpoint, and concerning the reaction to that game and the sales of that game and stuff. People don't want that, and it's kind of lacking in true stealth mechanics and a really focused good story and things like that. So on the bright side, I do have some pushback on that, and that from some conversations I've had and just from paying attention to what's kind of going on at Ubisoft, the person who was kind of responsible for all of the Ubisoft titles kind of all synergizing and becoming a similar thing is gone. They were one of the people who actually were punished for some awful stuff they were doing behind the scenes there at Ubisoft. And so that person is now gone. And I'm under the impression that the person who has replaced them is much more supporting of Ubisoft titles and IPs kind of separating themselves and maybe being just straight single player games with really good stories. The issue is that if that person took over like last year, and they're greenlighting projects now or in the last year that we won't see for 4 or 5 years. So unfortunately, the reality is that at Ubisoft, we're probably still going to see some of these kind of cookie cutter open world games for a couple more years, or at least them chasing trends from 4 or 5 years ago, cough, cough, Frontline, cough, cough, Hyperscape, for a while, because those games are in development already, and they probably aren't just going to scrap them because Ubisoft wants to get some kind of return, right? So I overall, I mean, I think Splinter Cell coming back is a great thing. I hope it's given to a studio that can handle it. I hope that that studio is allowed to make a Splinter Cell game and not just make a Splinter Cell version of the Ubisoft kind of staple. And I will remain positive until given reason not to be, other than their like history and track record. The second story today is talking about Starfield, the Settled Systems teaser. As of today, I'm recording this on Friday. They have released this trailer to everyone, but on, I believe it was Thursday, they sent out an email to an unlisted video where you could watch this a little bit early, even though it got shot around social media, basically as soon as anyone got it. And what it is, it's a short clip talking about the lore that will be shown in Bethesda's new Starfield game, talking about some of the factions, the world that you'll be kind of in, the company that our protagonist will be working for. Look, it's Bethesda. And this is a concept art and basically concept art trailer. We've heard great things before with with Fallout 76 and with Fallout 4. Even though I kind of like 4, I think 4 is not a terrible game. It's just not it's not the step forward people were expecting. Same with 76. But it's hard not to get hyped, man. They're saying all the right things, they're showing all the right stuff. It's really exciting. And for me, what's so exciting, we'll be talking about Mass Effect in the next story. What they've shown so far and talked about with Starfield gives me like heavy Mass Effect vibes, which is super exciting because I only got into Mass Effect this year. I'm 10 years late, right? But it's my favorite franchise now. It's at least tied with The Division, and it might be above at this point. The problem is that right now, from a Mass Effect perspective, you have the trilogy, which the Legendary Edition came out. It's great. It's a lot of fun to play. But after you've knocked out 3 or 4 runs, you've kind of done most of what you can do. I'm still going to play it more. And then you have Andromeda, which I'm playing through right now. I'll be talking about that in the next segment, which isn't as bad as people think, but it's not quite scratching that itch, right? And we aren't getting the next Mass Effect game for 4 or 5 years, at least, if not more. So with all of that, if you want that Mass Effect itch scratched, it looks like Starfield is at least going to try. I mean, we know it's going to have hopefully a better and more of a callback to New Vegas or Fallout 3 social system where you have conversations and branching stories, and you affect the world and how people react to you by the way that the things you do and the things you say. We know we'll have that from this in some capacity. They have kind of like a space punk kind of vibe going on that is futuristic. Like, it's not all broken down and old, like it looks futuristic, but it looks dirty and lived in, which is really cool. And it comes out in like a year. Like, it comes out next year. It was rumored. It feels like Starfield's been around forever because there were rumors about it for years, and then they finally confirmed it last year, and that it's coming. Or no, they confirmed it. They confirm it this year? But that's coming in 2022, and it's not that far away. And if it's a game who can hold us Mass Effect stands for a couple years, or at least a year or two, when we'll then probably start getting information about the next Mass Effect, that's what I want from it. And I'm really hoping that it ends up being like another totem on the Xbox kind of platform and the PC platform for people to get excited about, with Hellblade and Halo and Starfield and future Elder Scrolls games and Fallouts and stuff like that. So yeah, the trailer is great. I would go check it out if you haven't seen it yet. I know it's hard to trust Bethesda again. I know it's hard to not assume that it's just going to be another Fallout 76. Like I said before about Splinter Cell, I will be hype until I have reason not to be, for better or worse. Life is too short. The next segment here is talking about a couple Mass Effect things. The main one being a video came out yesterday by People Make Games on YouTube, where they interviewed 4 or 5 or more ex-BioWare devs talking about the the endings of Mass Effect 3, which is a topic again after the Legendary Edition has come out. And they're all former devs. They couldn't, I guess they reached out to try to get official commentary from BioWare and current devs, and no one was interested, which, especially after you watch this video, you'll kind of understand why a lot of them have just said, okay, we're going to move on. That is not a part of our lives anymore. But it's a really interesting video. And what was kind of cathartic about it is that the ideas, the alternative ideas to the endings that we got and have now in the Mass Effect 3, final game of that trilogy, that the ideas that they had instead weren't better. To this day, I have still not seen anyone propose, whether devs or ex-devs or even fans, endings that really are that much better than what we got. I still think it would be nice if in Mass Effect 3 in general, but especially in the endings, if maybe we got a little more than just like some screenshots of what happened afterwards and some narration, and that maybe if some of those decisions from the entire series really truly impacted the end more. But so basically what they talked about is that there was still their alternative idea was that Shep would like plug into the Citadel when he gets there at the end, instead of kind of what we got where he talks to the Star Child, which is what a lot of people hate, and that he would do it would be kind of an interaction similar to the VR environment that we saw in the Geth Fighters mission at the end of the game, and that you would actually speak to a like trapped Queen Reaper who had basically been forced into this virtual world by the rest of the Reapers because they didn't want to listen to her, and that through this Queen Reaper you would complete the game in one of three ways. And the first one would be that you could pull yourself out of the virtual world and destroy the console, which is analogous to the destroy ending that we actually got. Or that Shep would become like the King Reaper and stay in that virtual world to control all of the Reapers with the Queen's help, which is what very similar to the Control ending that we got anyways. And then finally, that Shep would convince the Queen Reaper to, combine all of the synthetics and organics, and it would become this symbiotic world, which is essentially what we got with the synthetic world. So it was really funny when I finished this video. I just remember being like, I mean, I think that some people would have appreciated this like Queen Reaper interaction more than the Star Child. A lot of people hate that interaction. I personally don't. It doesn't bother me. I think it's fine. But what was kind of cathartic about watching this video is that you've seen people moan and groan about these endings for 10 years now, or almost 10 years. And at the end of the day, they really didn't have a better idea. Like it's not like they scrapped a better idea and gave us the ones that we got. The ones that we got were the best ones they had. Now, in theory, in hindsight, could we go back and say like, well, we could have done these endings instead? Like, sure, that's easy to do. But I guess there is at least some comfort in that the endings that we got were the best ones they were coming up with. So, especially after they did the extended cut. So I found that kind of interesting. I did do a video, which I'll talk about more in a little bit, talking about kind of what I think we may see during N7 Day, which if you're not a Mass Effect fan, November 7th of every year is N7 Day. N7 is a military rank that the protagonist in the trilogy attained, and it's a big kind of notable thing in the franchise. And so November 7th of last year, we actually got our first teaser trailer and confirmation that there will be another Mass Effect game, which was super exciting. And the teaser was pretty notable. I made a video, which I'll talk about at the end of the show, breaking down this trailer, even though it's been done 100 times, over the last year. And it's potentially leading on to some pretty interesting things about the next game. At the same time, the next game isn't even supposed to go into full development until 2023. So I think that we may get another teaser trailer of some type this year. I suspect they'll probably do that until they can show us real legitimate like stuff that is being worked on. I'm not expecting it to confirm anything really big. There's a big debate right now going on about whether or not the next Mass Effect game is going to take place like way in the future, around like the Andromeda timeline, which is 600 years after the trilogy, or if it's going to take place right after the trilogy, or if it's going to be kind of a maybe starts off right after and then jumps forward. We don't know. I could see them maybe trying to at least like tease what's going on. They the person who's leading the project right now has kind of said some vague stuff, but hasn't really confirmed anything and has left a lot out there to interpret. Um, so we'll see. I think we'll get a teaser of some type. I'm really curious to if maybe we'll get like an announcement that maybe Andromeda might get like a 60 like the FPS boost on Xbox. That would be really cool. Inquisition, Dragon Age Inquisition has that, which came out 3 years before Andromeda. And in Andromeda, you can really tell it's only 30 FPS. It's rough. So it would be cool if they did that. There's this tiny little hope that some of the community has that they might reintroduce the multiplayer to the Legendary Edition. I don't expect that. A real dream would be that they would maybe do like almost like a Legendary Edition DLC and maybe include some dialogue and some story stuff that got cut from the original game and that they were able to fairly easily add in to the Legendary Edition. That's probably not going to happen. They're probably done with the Legendary Edition, but I'll definitely be curious to what they do or don't say for the N7 day this year. And we'll have to wait and see. I'm hoping for a trailer. I think that's the most realistic thing. Some kind of CGI teaser trailer, which may or may not confirm or at least tease some details about the next game. The final bit on this Mass Effect section is talking about Andromeda. I'm replaying it right now, and it's a lot better than I thought. I've played it. I played Andromeda after my first Legendary Edition playthrough. I blew through all the priority missions. I didn't do anything on the side, and I left it being like, that's fine, but I don't really want to play it again. This time I'm doing a much more, I'm not going to do a 100% run because there's way too much crap to do in that game that isn't that fun, but I'm doing a lot of side missions. I'm doing the loyalty missions with my crew, and I'm then slowly doing the main story and honestly enjoying it a lot more. It's a solid game to just waste some time in. I need a Mass Effect fix. I don't really want to play Division or some other games right now, so I'm playing Andromeda and I'm honestly having a pretty good time. It's got some really cool callbacks to the original trilogy, some really cool Easter eggs. The combat is pretty good. The story isn't as bad as I remember, especially as I'm fleshing it out more. There's a lot of quality of life stuff, like when you go to a planet, like when you travel to a planet in the trilogy, you would never see that planet. You would just see the inside of your ship. But in this game, when you do it, like you see the planet you're sitting by outside of your ship. It's really cool. The navigation of the ship is great. The navigation of the bases is really cool. The open worlds, I think, are like too big. So I hope the next game finds a balance between like it's probably going to be open world in some capacity, but maybe not quite as big. But there, it's not a bad game, especially if you really give it a chance, which I'm trying to do now, and it's been fruitful so far. So yeah, so Andromeda, if you're a Mass Effect fan looking for a fix or someone just looking to blow a bunch of time in a game, it's not the worst look, and try to play it on PC because on there you can play at 60 FPS or more. That's the way to play it. The next bit here is talking about the BF, the Battlefield 2042 beta, what we learned blog that DICE and EA put out. So the biggest news in this was that they're going to keep the specializations the way they are. In the old Battlefield games, they've always had like classes. So you had like an assault class who had certain abilities. You had a scout class that was like a sniper. You had a medic class that was a medic. And then you had a support class that had certain things. Well, this time they're not really doing that. Instead, they're doing specializations. And it's kind of like a hero system, similar to what like Overwatch has or something like that. So the big thing is that each specialization has like essentially a little bit of a boost on something, and then like a special skill or talent. And so they've also revealed more of the specializations. And so there's one specialization where they have a grappling hook. There's a new one that they just showed that basically has like aimbotting, or not, or like where you can see enemies through the walls, like aim hacks, essentially, for a short time. And I think they're fine. I think they're okay. I think it's going to be, I really have a hard time believing there's going to be a lot of diverse end game meta with this, because they aren't going to limit like how many people on each team can be a certain specialization. So I think that people are going to identify one or two specializations that are like the best ones, because it used to be that you could only use like certain weapons and equipment and stuff with certain classes. Well, with these specializations, everyone can be the same specialization, but one person can have an LMG and the other one can have a sniper. And then you can even select any of the equipment you want. So ammo resupply or rocket launchers and things like that. So I think my main issue with the specializations is I think that one or two or three are going to become meta and no one's going to use the other ones. And I don't love that. I prefer the class system for that. And there were even servers that would like limit your class system before. So you couldn't have a whole team of snipers. You couldn't have a whole team of medics or assault or support. They would like force diversity in that, which I think made the game more interesting. But though you would back then have people just make their own squad so they could pick whatever they wanted, until servers would put limits on the number of squads as well. So they also talked about a bunch of quality of life updates for Battlefield 2042 before release, like the UI design in general being put together a bit more. A big one is the kill feed being at the bottom middle of the screen and not, I think it was on the left side or something before during the beta. That's such an iconic Battlefield thing for that kill, for really not just kill count, or for kill messages, but for anything that you do. It just always had this like this very iconic thing of it popped up in the bottom middle of the screen and would go up and then it would disappear, and it was just very satisfying. You would blow up a transport that would have like 5 enemies in it. You'd see all those kills pop up. It's just really cool, and I'm glad they had the sense to do that the right way. They also talked about other things like rebalancing how many tanks are on the map that we got to play Orbital, and probably rebalancing that on other maps as well. There just weren't enough tanks. Like, it was really weird. You're used to seeing so many vehicles in Battlefield, and there weren't very many. So they're boosting that up. Some movement changes, a grenade warning when a grenade is near you, which blows my mind that wasn't there anyways, as well as a bunch of other small changes. So overall, I'm a little skeptical still of the specialization system, but they're sticking with it, and they've made that insanely clear. So get used to it because it's not going away at this point. Overall, I just kind of want to see this game come out and start playing it. It's going to be buggy. It's going to have server issues. It's just the nature of it. If you're a Battlefield fan, you are expecting that. I'm not saying that's a good thing. We shouldn't just accept, low quality stuff. But you can either live in a imaginary world where that doesn't happen, or you can live in the real world where you know what's going to happen. I'm not saying it's good or bad. It's just the way it is, and it should be better, but it's probably not going to be. So deal with that, I guess. The third to last story or segment here is talking about, I actually just added this before I started. The Grand Theft Auto, the Trilogy Definitive Edition has a trailer and has a bunch of screenshots out. So it's really interesting. So they're basically doing a remaster of the Grand Theft Auto 3, San Andreas, and I think it was Vice City, and which are, I actually never played 3, but I played San Andreas and Vice City. I should not have been allowed to play those games. I was far too young. And so what I was expecting with this remaster that they announced a few weeks ago was that I don't know why I expected this because it was probably too big. I thought they were going to do like a full rendition, like Red Dead Redemption 2 level of detail, a remake of all these games. But then the other side of me was like, that would take like 10 years to do. Like that would be a huge project. And so what we know now after seeing this trailer is that it's not like a modern take on graphics. It's very much the kind of original graphic style, but it's much cleaner. It's in 4K. It's in 60 FPS for consoles. It looks really good, and I mean, it looks old, but the way it's smoothed out and the way that they did it, is very. It's like cartoony almost, but not in a bad way. It's really hard to explain. It's what it is it's the way you think you remember it looking when you played it originally 10 years ago plus. It's what you think, like when you think about like, oh man, San Andreas was awesome. And the way you see San Andreas in your head is the way it looks now. Because if you look at actual original San Andreas, it looks terrible. It looks so bad. It's very, very bad. But if you look at what this rendition of it is, it doesn't look like modern, perfect, graphics, but it does look the way you think you remember the old games. And so I think it looks great. It's $60 for all three. I don't know if that's going to be a day one thing for me. I'll probably wait for a little bit, but I will probably end up getting it because that series just has a lot of nostalgia for me, and I am curious to what I'll think of those games as an adult when I played them all as a child the first time, and I didn't understand a lot of what they were talking about. I didn't understand a lot of references they were making, and I didn't kind of have the view of the world that I have now that is addressed a lot in those games, especially San Andreas. So, yeah, so I'm excited for it. I think it looks really cool, and I'm definitely interested to see what the reaction is going to be when people get to play it. A couple things here. I have a couple games I just tried out recently, and I was going to talk about them. The first one is last night on Thursday night. I streamed Echo Generation. It's a game that just came out on Game Pass for Xbox. It's on other platforms as well. It's interesting. It's if you ever played the game The Tourist. It released right when right when the Series X and PS5s came out. It's one of those weird games where it renders at 8K but scales down to 4K because it's just not realistic to do 8K on consoles right now. One, because they won't be able to do it for real, like in the long run, even though they can technically output it. But at the same time, like there's like a handful of 8K TVs, and I think they're like $20,000. So no one's playing 8K right now. But the Taurus was like a cute little game, little adventure game, and this Echo Generation has a very similar art style. It's not the same dev, but it's a very similar art style. But instead, it's you play as a kid and his friends in like a turn-based combat game in his little town. And I only got about an hour into it. I'm not into turn-based games. I don't like turn-based fighting and stuff like that. But that's on me, that's not the game's fault. For people who like that style of gaming, I think this game will probably be right up their alley. I thought it was a kid's game at first, but some of the themes that come up very quickly are not for kids. So, this is a great game for adults. I think I would not suggest letting kids play it. It definitely delves pretty quickly into some pretty dark stuff. So, and from what I've seen from trailers and stuff, it gets like chaotic as the game goes on. So yeah, Echo Generation, I think it's worth taking a look at. My biggest thing is that and I'm sure the soundtrack kicks in later in the game, but the menu soundtrack is one of the best soundtrack songs I've ever heard in my entire life. It is so good. If you check out my Twitter at Bon Diesel, I posted a clip of me reacting to it and like losing my mind because it's so good. It sounds so cool. So. And then the last one here is talking about Back for Blood. A few people asked me to talk about that. Back for Blood, I don't like the Left 4 Dead games, and so when I went to Back for Blood, I was like, okay, this is a new take on that genre. I'm more into those type of games now. Like I'm into like co-op and shooter games more than I used to be, and I just can't get into it, man. It's too stressful. It's too chaotic. Playing as mostly a solo player with either the bots or with randoms, it's just not a very fun experience. And Back for Blood, I think, is going to have a very passionate medium to small sized audience, and then when they release new content, people will come back to check it out. I don't think it's that great. It's not my cup of tea. It has some really cool details, some really cool mechanics, but at the end of the day, I'm good. I'm not I'm not probably gonna play it anymore. I'm sure I'll uninstall it soon, but that's the beauty of Game Pass. I didn't pay $60 for Back for Blood. I paid for my subscription and I got to play it day one. And well, technically day one. They did an early access thing that people really didn't like, but full release day one, I got to play it, checked it out for a couple hours. I'm good. I probably don't need to play it anymore. But if you're into Left 4 Dead, if you're into that horde zombie type of game, it's perfect for that. So I do highly suggest checking it out if that's your thing. Okay, on to some listener questions. The first one here is from Ron Shock on YouTube. If someone gave you a PS5, what's the first game you'd buy and why? So it would either be the new Ratchet and Clank game, because I've seen so many people rave about how that's like one of the first big showings of the next gen capabilities and things like that. And it just looks fun. So the other one, well, I didn't have a PS4 or a PS4 Pro, so I would probably get Last of Us 2. It's a third-person adventure shooter, kind of grungy game. I would love to see a Division game made in that style one day. I know that game had a bunch of controversy. I don't care. I haven't seen any of the controversy that's upset me or annoyed me that wasn't just some weak dudes being weak about weak stuff, in my opinion. So I've actually watched like 3 or 4 playthroughs of The Last of Us 2 and The Last of Us 1. I've read a bunch into the lore and people's theories and stuff. Like, I'm really invested in that series. I just haven't ever played it because I don't have that system. And I don't intend on probably having it anytime soon. So, yeah, I would probably do one of those 2 games. I saw that Horizon is on PC, God of War is coming to it. Those games don't really appeal to me. Sony definitely has the lock on these like third person adventure story games. Horizon looks a little too chaotic for me. God of War, I'm a God of War 1, 2, and 3 stan. I can't do the over the shoulder thing. I know people love it, and maybe I'll try it out one day, but I'm good. I would probably do Last of Us or the Ratchet and Clank game. But yeah, great question. Thank you very much. Master Prime had my second set of questions here, per usual, because Master Prime is always there for me to give me something to talk about. First question, do you think the Division 2 needs Loot 3.0? If you don't know what that means, about a year and a half ago, a big update came out for the Division 2 that kind of simplified and kind of redid the loot system. And some people loved it, some people hated it. I personally thought it was great. I thought it made builds much more viable and much simpler, especially for the average player. Of course, a bunch of the tryhards who don't want the game to be accessible to anyone but them didn't like it. But I think it was, I like the current system. I think it could use some tweaks, but I don't really think it needs like a full on 3.0 revamp of the entire system, mostly because I think it'll be a huge mistake if they try to make people grind more levels with this new Division 2 content that's coming, and get rid of everything that you farmed for the last year and a half, 2 years. If they try to bump up the level, people are going to lose their mind. And I will play the content, but I will probably not stick around afterwards. So, yeah, I think that's a very risky thing they could do, is to do a Loot 3.0, but we'll have to wait and see. And then the second question here is thoughts on the Uncharted movie trailer. It's a game movie, man. I don't know. I've seen some mixed reactions to it. I like Tom Holland. I think it's going to be an is what it is type of deal. It's, even if it wasn't a game movie, it would have appeal because of the people in it. I don't know. I'm not really that invested in Uncharted. I'm hoping for a cool adventure game. People were commenting about how Red Notice, the movie being made by Netflix, who's being directed by Rostin Thurber, who is going to be the director of the Division movie, which is probably about to get started filming by him now that Red Notice is done and everything. So, yeah, I don't know. A lot of people were talking about how the Uncharted trailer felt like less of an Uncharted trailer than the Red Notice one. So we may have some copycat stuff going on there. Indie content updates. I have a what's next for Mass Effect video over on my YouTube, so please check that out. It's just Bond Diesel on YouTube, where I do about, I think it's 28 minutes of me talking about what I think is going to happen in the next game based on what we learned in the trilogy and Andromeda. And I do a big breakdown of the teaser trailer from last year's N7 Day, and talk about how after playing through the main trilogy a few times, playing Andromeda a bit now, what I think they're trying to tell us with that trailer. So go check that out for sure. And the last bit here is, if you're a patron, if you're given bits or subs or whatever you do, any money that I'm getting now for the stream will get saved up and invested into a better camera. I'm sick of using my little Logitech 920. It does an okay job, but I would like to be able to do a little bit more with doing like narrative videos and stuff like that, and showing myself and not having to make it super small because the actual resolution of the camera isn't anywhere near as good as it needs to be. So if you're curious about where any of your money is going now, it's long story short, going to be a DSLR of some type to be able to have some higher quality videos and streams and stuff. So that's the wrap up. I enjoyed this show. It was a nice conversation. We got about 45 minutes here, and lots of cool news. And I think that we're looking at lots of news basically from here on out with the way that the PlayStation and Xbox and even PC game schedules are going. It looks like especially as we start to hopefully pull out COVID and stuff, we'll start to really have a lot of cool stuff coming out. I stream here, I stream on Twitch a few times a week. If you want to check me out there, it's twitch.tv/BondDiesel. You can follow me here on YouTube for other types of videos, and my stream VODs do get posted here 24 hours after I finish my stream. You can check me out on Twitter at BondDiesel or at the EchoCast if you only want gaming and podcast related tweets. If you want some cool EchoCast or Bond Diesel merch, I highly suggest checking out streamlabs.com/BondDiesel. That is all I have. So until next time.